doesn't have to be real formalish. Just turn it on and let him tell me a story. I want to hear one of your good ones.
Sure.
Probably could go back to the early one. Probably. How old were you? 4 or 5?
The shoe story.
Yeah, I like that one. That's probably one of my favorites. Then we can go into the inventions that you want to see. Do you know that somebody invented your conveyor belt shoes? Do you know that? We saw it on TV.
Oh, really?
A rendition of your conveyor belt? Yes, I saw it. We saw it. We laughed.
Millions were lost.
Millions down the drain because you didn't follow through with your invention.
Well, if we can get the refrigerator microwave oven to the marketplace, we might still have a chance.
Might still make millions, huh? Oh.
Anyway, when we were young, Mom would send us to the shoe repair shop up on Weller Street. Was it Weller? Wilson? To
When you're 4 or 5, you forget all the details. Exact details. He couldn't read the signs anyway. He just knew where it was, right?
It's part of my problem. Anyway, we would take shoes and deposit them there to be fixed, and they would give us the claim checks to come back and get them, but we either lost them or never returned with them because usually all you had to do was to point out the shoes that were fixed, and he would.
Let you bring them home.
He had enough faith in you that you weren't
trying to
steal someone else's shoes. But anyway, one particular occasion, Mom had sent me there with her shoes, and when I went back to pick them up, I didn't have a claim ticket, and he wanted me to tell him which ones they were, and I couldn't describe them to him very well, but he asked me to tell him what type of shoes they were, and the only description I could come up with was the only name that Mom ever gave to them, was that they were her clodhoppers. So I told him that they were clodhoppers.
Such a word.
And about that time, the friend of his that was sitting in the shoe repair shop with him doubled over in laughter. And I didn't know what the joke was because that was what Mom had always called it. Anyway, so the shoe repairman just smiled a little bit. He didn't really laugh at me, but he asked me to come around the counter and with all of his racks of shoes to come point out which ones were Mom's shoes. So I went over and pointed them out to him, and I think he agreed with me after that they were indeed clodhoppers, and I paid him. And took the shoes home.
Well, that was the time that I had given you, I think it was $5 bill. I entrusted him with it, paid for them, and independent money. He takes the shoes, as I remember it, and went clear down to Williams Street here, and then up Williams home. And I kind of began to wonder where he was, because he was only about 4 years old.
Did you stop at the store for some poppin' cupcakes?
No.
No?
I don't think so.
He got home with it, okay.
I was probably still at the age that I was given candy for free down to the store.
You had to pay for
I
it.
had to pay for that anyway.
Did you get free candy?
I got candy from Ann for several years anyway.
I used to get, when Nancy lived up the street here, she lived up here, what, second, one, two, up the third, fourth house up here. When I was 8 or 9 years old, I suppose. And she would send me to the store, and I would have to go clear down to Williams and then down to Sheridan. And there was a woman that ran a store, one of the stores, there's a couple stores over there, one of the stores that always gave me a sack of cocaine.
How about the story, the time that Nancy and Dale were gonna take you to church or somewhere or something?
Yeah. Dale used to drive all of us up to church on Sunday mornings. He would usually take Mom and myself and Galen and sometimes Dad if Dad didn't go on ahead early. This one particular Sunday morning, we were always running late, and this was no exception. Everyone else had gotten ready except for me, and Dale was already sitting in the street with the car running, and Nancy and Mom and Galen were already in the car, and I was the last one to get ready, and I came running out of the house, slid right into the back seat of the car. The back door of the car was open. I slid into the back seat, and the door was closed behind me, and Dale starts to slowly pull on up the street. Nancy hadn't realized that I had gotten into the back seat. She didn't notice when I got in, and so she says to Dale, "Well, aren't you going to wait for Mike?" And Dale returns in a gruff voice. He realized that I had gotten in the car. He says, "Well, if you can't get ready in time, we're just going to have to leave him at home." And Nancy was taken aback. She says, "Well, you don't have to be so nasty about it." And about that time, she turns around, she sees me in the back seat. And at that point, Dale says, "Well, haven't you ever been fooled before?" And Nancy says, "Yeah, when I married you." Let's see. You were asking about some of my paper delivering experience.
Oh yes, do tell us about your paper delivering experience. Wasn't there a deaf couple or something on your lap? What was that?
There are several
Interesting.
several interesting people. This one particular couple, well, they were deaf, and when I went to collect, it was nearly impossible to get them to hear me. Sometimes I was afraid I'd break my hand hammering on the door, or break my toe kicking the door. But eventually, they would always realize I was out there. And they usually had their TV turned up at about 120 decibels. But eventually, I was able
And how
to
were
make
they
myself.
able to know you were there?
Well, I think they finally felt the vibrations of their side of their house shaking.
I thought it was they used to wear a stake around your neck to get the dog's attention.
Now that was Mel that had to get the dog's attention. And then the frustrating thing about paper routes, at least one of the frustrating things, was when the trucks would drop off the papers, and they would drop them off on the corner, oftentimes without any protection around the papers, so if it started raining, after they dropped them off, your papers would get totally soaked, and you, or at least I anyway, would have to deliver the papers to these people all soaked. So usually I picked out the most benevolent people to give the soaked ones to, so I wouldn't get in trouble. one particular benevolent person, I thought he was probably the nicest one on the route, so I picked out the most soaked one to give to him. And this was 5 o'clock in the morning, so I didn't think anyone would be up at that time, but I had the paper all out of my bag, ready to put into his mail slot, and he comes to the door to take the paper from my hand. So at that point it was too late. I had to go in and give him the soaked paper, even though I had a few dry ones left in my paper pouch. But since he was so nice, he got the most soaked one.
Oh.
Then there was the time that usually in the month of March or April, the winds would usually be pretty severe. And one morning after going down to get to my papers, I think I think I took the wagon, or I was still taking the wagon with me at that time.
Pulling the wagon with
Yeah.
the papers, okay.
And he's
So
stacked.
we're talking how old?
Probably
15 or 16? No.
probably 12 or so.
Okay, okay.
Anyway, stacking the papers up on the wagon, and a lot of times I wouldn't, a lot of times I wouldn't prepare for the wind. I didn't have any bricks with me or anything to weight the papers down, so occasionally I'd start pulling the wagon down the street, and one of the top paper would fly off and blow down the street.
So you'd be short of paper.
Well, I'd go running after it, trying to get as many pieces as I could. So anyway, I was usually left with a very small paper. So
So who got it?
so I'd have to beef up the paper. There's somebody else's one ad.
Take a page from here and a page from there, you get this guy.
Somebody else's funny section in somebody else's TV guide. And if I had a front page, then that would make it constitute a complete paper. But one morning, I think the front section actually blew away too. So one of the people ended up getting, I think, just a sports page. A sports page in the comics. I think that's about all they got.
And it went too. Was there any particular person? You don't remember that part, huh?
I remember which house got it, but I can't remember the people in the house but I never heard anything about it. Probably meant that those were the only two sections I read anyway. They were probably grateful if they didn't have the rest of the paper they have to throw away. And they just had the useful sections.
Okay. Well, which one of the couple things total that you want to say next?
Oh, the one about freezing the bottle of pop that Dad got upset about. It's always kind of funny. Dad would bring home Pepsis every now and then. He'd buy at the store. If he found them on sale, he'd stock up with several six-packs in the garage or in the basement. And one particular time in the evening, I decided to get a bottle of pop out, and in order to cool it down quicker, I'd stick it in the freezer and come back for it an hour or so later. But this particular evening, I stuck it in there and forgot about it. And Dad was the one that discovered it the next morning when he got up to make breakfast. And Dad was quite upset by this exploded bottle of Pepsi he found in the freezer. And he demanded to know who it was that had stuck that bottle of pop in there. And so I owned up to it. And
You did.
he immediately demanded that I pay him $0.25 for it. Which was never asked us to pay for the pop before, but his reasoning was that he didn't mind us drinking them up, but if we were going to blow them up, we had to pay him. There was another time when
Who cleaned it up?
I don't think there's that much to clean up. I think there's
It just kind of went all.
most of it stayed in the bottle, and there was
Oh.
just a few chips of glass I think that had to be picked up.
Oh, okay. You lucked out.
There was another time with a carton of donuts. I remember.
Did he thought he had well hidden or what?
No, they were on top of the refrigerator, and I was fairly small, or I was able to reach up to the top of the refrigerator just barely on my tiptoes. I think I had taken a donut out somehow, and I had to put the lid of the donut carton back down. And at the time, I noticed it was kind of tough going. I couldn't get the lid down very easily. I had to keep pushing it, and finally I got it down. Back on the box. I was up on my tiptoes doing it. I couldn't really see what I was doing. And when Dad came out to get breakfast, I think he was going to have a donut or two for himself. And he gets the donut carton down, and he finds that one of the donuts has been sliced in half by the end flap on the donut carton. He was pretty happy about that. Couldn't understand why someone would slice one of the donuts in half. And that was one that I didn't own up to, I don't think.
But tell us about the birds. You got like good bird stories?
Do you remember the time that the bird flew into the bowl of tapioca?
No, I think that was either before my time or else
That was vintage.
before I could remember.
It was when we were building the big room out there, I think. Get Gordon to tell that.
Gordon's not here. What happened? Did you have company? Or what was
No.
it? Just the bird?
I had made up a big bowl of tapioca. The boys, all of them, I guess, liked tapioca pudding, so I made a double batch to feed on. And we were building that room. You ought to remember that one. We were building that room out there, and there was a window there where the refrigerator is now. And so it was open, at that stage where it was open. The kids, when they would come home from school, they'd turn the parakeet out, let it fly through the house. And for some cause or other, they forgot about the open window, I think. Anyway, I had put this bowl of tapioca in the middle of the table, and we were sitting down to eat when this bird flew right square into that bowl of hot tapioca. And we were determined not to throw that bowl of tapioca away. The bird liked to go to the faucet and take a bath. Kids would turn the water on, and it just really had a big time under that faucet. So that was how it got the tapioca out of the
So it cleaned itself out, huh?
And we had tapioca pudding besides.
There was one other funny thing with the parakeets, at least the last couple parakeets that we had. There was a store, one of the corner stores, had a gumball machine that if you got specially marked gumballs, you got to pick out a prize. So one time I picked out a prize of this little skull that had, I think, diamonds in its eyes, and it was hollow inside. And after I tired of playing with it, we had rigged up a couple little bells in the inside the skull and put a wire through the top of the skull and put it into the parakeet's cage. And at least the last couple parakeets we had, anytime you would ring the bells, they would immediately jump over to that side of the cage, stick their head up inside the skull, and just start chattering away. So here was a skull with a parakeet's tail and feet sticking out the bottom of it, and you would hear the parakeet chattering to the skull. Anyway, that became dubbed the parakeet's ancestor phone. Whenever they were chattering, they were talking with their ancestors.
What was your dog's name?
The dog had a number of names. Some of them which can be repeated for public consumption. I think the last name that I had given it was Fritter, and I'm not sure exactly where that name came from. Its name started out as Isabel, went to Izzy, went to Briss, to Brissy, to anyway, somehow it ended up being Fritter.
I'm taking this, what do you call, you take, I don't want to call it bets. Maybe it's bet. What do you call that thing whenever you say it's going to be a time or a place or something? You take odd. What do you do? What do you call that?
It's a pool?
Pool. Maybe that's it. I have a pool going. That possibly this wonderful little person that's going to show up in your doorstep next June, that we thought possibly the #1 lead name could possibly be Fritter. And I have odds for Fritter.
I think those have to be fairly long odds.
Just tell them how you got you and Galen got your nicknames.
Well, I had a number of nicknames growing up too, but my original nickname was Puff, and apparently that came because of my habit of puffing out my cheeks, I guess, as a very young kid.
What would that look like?
You can just imagine.
Oh, come on.
Anyway.
Do you remember doing it?
No, I
No,
don't
that's
remember
beyond
doing
you.
it.
Okay, all right, we'll let that one pass.
But my second succession of nicknames came because of being skinny as a little kid. I used to be able to suck in my stomach, and to many people it looked like a skeleton in front of it because of my ribs showing. Anyway, so I got the nickname Ribs.
Okay,
Because
can we do that? Can you still suck it in like that?
No.
No? Oh, that won't work either, okay.
Anyway, Ribs went to, I think it went straight from Ribs to Rubs. Anyway, Rubs was my name for many years. That was probably my name until I got to college, I think.
Do all your friends know you as Rubs,
No.
or was this just strictly
No,
a family
it was
endearment?
strictly family and a few neighborhood kids.
Oh, okay. So the yearbook did not read?
No.
Okay, okay.
He also had a number of nicknames. Galen's nickname, I think the one that lasted the longest was cakes. And I think that was just because people said he ate a lot of cakes, and so it became his nickname. But one summer, either Raj or Mel, one or the other, took the copper tone bottle and spelled his name on his back with the copper tone tanning solution.
You're kidding
And
me. Was that you, Shug?
And Galen, I don't think, realized what was going on at the time anyway. For the next few days he had his
I didn't know that.
yeah, name tanned on his back.
You mean that stuff that turns dark when you put it
Yeah,
on? Oh, okay.
it tans you regardless of whether you're in the sun or not.
Oh, okay, okay.
Well, your names, those two names are downstairs on the wall. Yeah.
Mm.
Who did that?
I think it's probably
Carved in the wall?
Probably Galen.
No, it's painted on.
Just
I think
painted
it
on?
was Galen.
It wasn't you. You wouldn't have done that, would you? You wouldn't have done that. I didn't think so.
And then maybe it was one of the older kids.
What's the worst thing you can remember doing? That still to this day bothers you? I know it's gotta be funny. Besides giving that dear sweet man that drenched paper.
Oh, probably the thing that got me in the most trouble growing up was one time when Jesse and Lois were here, and I think that we had been given the task of taking all the trash out. Anyway, I was still in my pyromaniac stage, and
Your what stage?
my pyromaniac phase, and there were some neighbor kids that were down kind of poking around the fire, and I think I took exception to one of them maybe trying to put out the fire or something. Anyway, I had a big long piece of cardboard that I lit the tip of the piece of cardboard in the fire, and I took off down the alley after with a flaming torch. Anyway, Mom had happened to look out the window at the wrong time. And I was banished to the bedroom for a few hours. Well, actually, that reminds me of another one that I didn't get in so much trouble for, but maybe I should have been in trouble for it. Just the opposite. It was water balloons instead of fire. The kid, the neighbor behind us, his mother would leave him at home all day when she worked, and usually leave him in the care of a babysitter who wasn't much older than the rest of us, if any older at all. So in other words, she didn't have any control over us. And we used to have some nice water balloon fights, and we'd also fill up these detergent squirt bottles with water and run after each other squirting that. And because this particular kid's mother wasn't home, usually that house turned into a fort of some sort. And so the kids would run into the house for protection, and a lot of times that protection would break down. And without a figure of authority there to protect the house, it tended to get drenched also.
Oh, no.
And after one particularly good drench, his mother came home, and the house still hadn't dried out, and she was a little upset by that.
I think that was the time she called.
Yeah, she made phone calls to all the responsible parties in the neighborhood.
Couldn't blame her much.
Do you remember an incident where a couple of your older brothers, or tell us from your perspective, when a couple of your older brothers were doing things they shouldn't be? How old were they?
Which time?
Yeah.
Well, that left them lame and
Oh, and then-
non-hearing, hearing impaired,
Yeah.
maybe I should say.
The fire, well, actually the cherry bomb incident, the famous cherry bomb incident.
How do you remember that?
Well, I had been given
You
The-
coaxed me.
yeah, I had been, yeah, first of all, I coaxed Mom into letting me go down to Missouri with a friend from the neighborhood, and I had been given a $5 bill with the mandate to bring back as many fireworks as I could for that $5 bill. Anyway, I was wanting to get as much pop for the $5 bill as I could, so I didn't mess around with any of the sparklers or the skyrockets or anything like that. I went for I went for the small explosives, which I think were about 1,000 or 1,500 firecrackers and a half-gross box of cherry bombs. Anyway, I think the cherry bombs, we were relieved of the cherry bombs by Raj, primarily, who kind of took control of those. He enlisted Mel's help in firing these cherry bombs down the street with the slingshot that they had. One of them would hold the wood part of the slingshot, and the other one would pull back with the cherry bomb. Or actually, I think one would hold the wood and the cherry bomb, and the other one would light it. And they let the fuse burn down about halfway, and then fire it off. And if they got it just right, the cherry bomb would explode at the peak of its arc. There was one cherry bomb that, for one reason or another, didn't go off when it was fired, and the neighbor kids all went down the street to look for it, and one of them found it and brought it back, and it was lit a second time, and it still wouldn't go off, and it was either on the third or fourth attempt that Mel stuck the match to the half-burnt fuse, and the cherry bomb just went off immediately. Apparently the middle of the fuse had been burnt out, and so it was just like sticking the match to the cherry bomb itself. And it exploded, and the next thing I knew, Raj was running across the street to Dale, because we still didn't have a car, Dale had a car. And within minutes he was on his way to the hospital, and Mel went along also. So left the rest of us neighbor kids wondering just exactly what had happened. And I was quite terrified by the whole incident, and I was kind of afraid to, but I found myself along with the other kids kind of looking around the yard for fingers or blood. I guess I thought maybe if he lost a finger out of the deal and we found it, then maybe it could be saved. But it wasn't until much later that evening we found out the whole story and how Roger had his fingers sewn up, at least one, I think probably a couple of his fingers sewn up. And Mel had to have some treatments for his chest because he'd had some fragments that had punctured his chest and arm, and it was for a long time that Mel had hearing loss in his ear and had troubles with ringing of that ear. But after that, then all the firecrackers got buried out in the backyard. And I think we actually sold the rest of the cherry bombs to another neighbor kid. But we were all afraid that we were all going to prison if the police came around and found any fireworks in the house, so we quickly got rid of them all.
What was the other one that you thought of?
not sure. I guess there were several. Well, there was one paper route when we're in the. I used to get up very early in the morning, deliver papers. I'd usually get up around 4:30 in the morning when I first had my paper routes. And there was one house on the end of the paper route. It was across Madison Avenue. And they didn't have the regular hooks underneath their mailbox, but they had kind of like a paper tube underneath their mailbox that you had to roll up the paper and slide it into that tube. And one morning at 4:30 in the morning, I had just about got the paper slid into the tube, but it slipped out of my hands and smacked their doorbell at 4:30 in the morning. And it was a very loud doorbell. And I ran the 100-yard dash in less than 9 seconds back across the street and hid behind the house until I thought that the danger was over.
Did you leave your wagon out?
No, it was far enough away from. It was clear across Madison Avenue, so the wagon was left almost a block away. So anyway, didn't care about it. This day, why Galen never collected from this one particular house on his paper route. There are many theories put forward, but to this day we can't really prove any of them. I think probably the theory that is the most widely accepted theory is that this person got behind in their payment 3 or 4 weeks, and Galen didn't quite have the nerve to go up and tell him that he owed this fairly large sum of money. So rather than face telling the subscriber that he owed quite a bit of money, Galen decided to just let him have the paper for free. And so this went on for well over a year. It might have went on for years, in fact. Galen would turn down all offers to even for any of us to even go and collect a portion of the money. And one of the times that I was out collecting with him, the subscriber actually came to the door and asked Galen if they'd paid yet that week. And Galen assured them that yes, they had, not to worry about it.
So how were they? How did they? What was the
any other
theories
theory?
to how they responded to the next carrier?
Well, we always theorized that they were probably pretty upset when the next carrier came around and had the nerve to actually charge them for the paper. We figured that they probably had come to accept the fact that they were to receive the paper for life for free. But,
Well, I had picked a big batch of rhubarb and laid it on the counter to clean it, and Mike came running through the house. Until he was in 2nd grade or so, he was very Dutchy, and only his mother could understand him. And came running through the house. Oh, we're gonna have barnyard pie. Along that same line, while he was in kindergarten, he had started to school with the little girl next door, and they were both in the same class, and seemingly everything was fine, but then the teachers decided that the class was too large, so they divided the class, and Mike thought he was free from this little girl. He was going to go into the other class, and here she followed him in there, and I guess she had to take care of him because he couldn't talk to him. She was his interpreter.
Yeah.